Welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Howell. I'm sitting in for Jennifer Hyland, who is the typical anchor of the Connect Caribbean report. We're so excited to have you here today. We have many exciting things to talk about. First of all, on October the 22nd, Governor Albert Bryant of the U.S. Virgin Islands signed a historic landmark memorandum of understanding that is really going to be something that's going to be our topic of conversation today. And we are going to have that handled, digging deeper into what does this memorandum of understanding have to do. How does it work? How will it impact you? How will it work for you? So heading up that discussion is going to be co-host of the Connect Caribbean show, Ambassador Dr. Andre Thomas, who is the chairman and CEO of Pleon Group Incorporated, and Raphael De Angelis, Vice Chairman of Pleon Group. So we're going to bring them in and get directly to this very exciting topic.
Reimagine a world where the Caribbean is seamlessly connected, where our people, our cultures, and our economies move freely across the islands. This is Connect Caribbean. More than a ferry service. It's the heartbeat of a new era, an era where economic opportunities expand, where trade flows freely across our seas, and cultural exchange flourishes. We are linking businesses, empowering communities, and reigniting the hope for a truly integrated Caribbean. Together, we're shaping a brighter, more unified future for the Caribbean. Connect Caribbean, connecting our islands, our people, our future.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Spirit Airlines is nearing a bankruptcy that would wipe out its shareholders. The airline is in talks with creditors that would restructure its crushing debt load in Chapter 11. The Wall Street Journal reported that Spirit's merger talks with rival Frontier have broken down. Spirit has been struggling to stay aloft after its proposed takeover by JetBlue was blocked on antitrust grounds. Apple is aiming to catch up with rivals in the smart home market, and now our tech writer Mark Gurman says it's getting closer to launching a new product category, a wall-mounted display that could be used to control appliances, handle video conferencing, and would use AI to control apps. We'll see what consumer prices look like this morning with the report for October due out before the opening bell on Wall Street. The post-election stock rally took a break yesterday, with declines ranging from around 0.1% to nearly 0.9%. Futures were lower this morning. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio. This is a Bloomberg.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Connect Caribbean World. And today I have with me my esteemed business partner, and we go back many years, and we both sat together one day in Guyana, and the seed of what has been created was actually birthed. And so he's Raphael De Angelis. He's the founder and CEO of Upturn Funds. And today we're going to talk about the possibilities and the infrastructure that has been created for Caribbean economic development by the signing of the MOU with the governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Welcome to Connect Caribbean World, Raphael.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for inviting me to your show. It's been a pleasure not only knowing you, but also working all those years into making this to where we are today. It's impossible not talk Caribbean if you don't talk the biggest market in the region, the United States. It's almost like, it was a natural marriage between the two to occur. And I'm glad that the private initiative with some government support has come into fruition into making the roadmap that at least we can all follow and endorse it and move forward with it.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask you two questions. Okay, the first question is that from your vantage point, what does the signing of the MOU, what are the possibilities that it creates? What are the doors that it has opened, and what has been made possible because of the signing of this agreement? Yeah.
It officialized the United States' interest in the region. It first has shown from Mark Green in our conference in Barbados, which is the head of Homeland Security in the United States Congress, the interest of actually bringing the United States into the region. With the governor leadership, this is becoming a reality. You know, it's coming from a U.S. territory that has the closest connection to the region, and that understands the region, understands the needs of the region. And ironically, the same needs that St. Croix has and the Virgin Islands has, the Caribbean people has it as well, which is better trade, better connecting routes, better food routes for food stability, create infrastructure for food stability across the region. So it was, you know, the biggest challenges in the region is to find creative solutions for the problems. I believe that we have put a very creative and very effective solution to the region.
Absolutely, absolutely. I actually believe that. Now, the second question I actually have for you is what does the U.S. Virgin Island, having a hub in the U.S. Virgin Islands, a Connect Caribbean ferry hub, what does it do for the U.S. and what does it do for the Caribbean?
You know, the very nature when it was agreed that the U.S. Virgin Islands would endorse this, so many things has taken place in the U.S. side. I mean, first, how the U.S. economy comes in and it's so strong into support initiatives that benefits the population in general, but also the region. You know, this is essential, you know, for it to happen, but also it triggers a development complex of industrial free trade zone in St. Croix. You know, understanding that St. Croix can only be a manufacturing hub, but also a transfer of know-how for the rest of the Caribbean. It allows us now to be able to make plans that we can decrease the food cost by creating hydroponic farming, you know, not only for this Virgin Islands, but also to be able to export this lower cost food to other islands and even transfer the technology to produce the same kind of food in local production, creating jobs and opportunities. This all happens by simply saying a leadership of a government to say, we can do this, we can make this happen. We have the infrastructure here in this island that can support you guys into this endeavor. And what we are seeing happening here is that today we are much closer with this movement as Caribbean and the United States and trade overall than we were in many, many years before. This is the first time that a governor of a Virgin Island or governor of a U.S. territory, for that matter, ever officially commit to bring the Caribbean together, you know, and this is why we're so excited about this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now, from your vantage point, what can we expect? What are the types of projects that can come from this alliance that has been created that can tangibly benefit Caribbean people?
You know, I always find it fascinating in the Caribbean. The Caribbean always say, what can it be for us? I think the narrative here is a little bit different. What the Caribbean people can do to make this project successful. It's time for us to start looking at our own home and say, you know, I want to demand that my government give incentives so that I can create a hydroponic farm and I can create my own business. Like I've known companies in Barbados, for example, incredible qualified citizens of Barbados that knows how to do strawberries and know how to grow them. They want to grow their hydroponic farms across the region, but there is no support. So the question on the table here is, let's work together into creating that support system, that financial support system that it's needed, that transportation infrastructure that we need to develop to help people in the Caribbean to develop their own businesses, to be able to grow a new economy that doesn't import $17 billion worth of food. Every Caribbean people here pay a lot of money for food. They spend all their hard-earned dollars bringing food in. And the question is, well, why are we producing at home? Why aren't we lowering the cost of our food? So what can I, a Caribbean citizen, contribute for this? Is it by voting? Is it by letting my government know that I need to do this? This has to happen. Is it by simply developing a business plan and looking for support so we start evaluating potential projects can benefit from the transportation infrastructure? It takes a country, and the people in that country to really want to raise a new economy. So the question that I have is, we are doing our part. We are showing a way how you can get there. We are giving you a project in how you can get there. We're bringing support as we can. We welcome every government to help us out. But the people in the Caribbean also has to talk, what can I do for this? How can I contribute to this project? I think this is in the stage that we are right now, where we are getting the population to start contributing to this. And the outcome is already on the roadmap, is already coming in the press. We know that economic growth across the region is expected to reach 5 to 6% in many years to come once this is integrated. The biggest economic development across the region is only possible with connecting those islands. This is not a plan that we created, by the way. This is a plan that's been on the drawing board for 40 years with very little engagement to the level that you have today. This is the highest engagement level into a logistics project in the Caribbean in the past 40 years. Nothing like this has ever happened. And we have an opportunity here and a responsibility of every citizen across the region to rise up and say, I want this.
Absolutely, and we're certainly going to do this. And in fact, as I really summarize my thoughts, is that the creation of Connect Caribbean ferry e-commerce and cargo service is going to have a catalytic effect across the region. What does a catalyst do? It increases the rate and the speed that something happens. And I believe that's the effect we're going to have. We're going to have a catalytic effect on GDP. We're going to have a catalytic effect on growth all across the region. Thank you, Raphael, and see you in the next segment. Over to you, Carla.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us an amazing overview of just sort of the architectural nature of what this MOU has brought to the table. We're very pleased, and we look forward to seeing you a little bit later on. Next up, we're going to be talking to Anthony Weeks as well as Chris Principe, and they're going to get more, a little bit deeper into certain elements of this MOU.
Elon Musk, through its satellite internet company Starlink, has applied to provide high-speed internet service to the Turks and Caicos Islands. Starlink aims to deliver reliable and fast connectivity across the islands using satellite technology that operates on land, sea, and air platforms. This service could significantly disrupt the local internet market, challenging established providers like Flow and Digicel. Starlink's satellite-based model is advantageous because it does not require traditional infrastructure like cable lines, instead using a simple receiver for connectivity. This setup makes it particularly appealing for remote areas and offers users an affordable high-speed internet solution. The Turks and Caicos Telecommunications Commission published Starlink's application for public scrutiny as required by the local telecommunications ordinance. The Commission has invited public comments and stated that Starlink must prove its technical and financial capabilities to operate in the region. However, Starlink later withdrew the application with plans to reapply, contingent on the creation of a new licensing category for non-geostationary orbit systems. The Commission is now consulting with industry players to possibly amend the fee structure. Starlink operates a large constellation of low Earth orbit satellites, which reduces latency and enables high-speed data activities like streaming, gaming, and video calls, making it a potential game changer for internet accessibility in the Turks and Caicos. Starlink is currently available in other Caribbean countries such as Barbados, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Clendenin, co-host of Connect Caribbean, and we're into the section called Connecting the Dots. With me are Anthony Weeks and Chris Principe, and we'll be discussing this afternoon the implications of the MOU and how we change our vision of what's happened in the Caribbean by having this monumental MOU and signing by the governor of the Virgin Islands. Anthony?
Thank you so much, John, for that opportunity to have this discourse on what impact this is going to have. Hi, Chris. I see that you're nighttime in Greece. I hope it's not too late where you are, but thank you for being part of the program. So I'm going to sort of put the different discussion in different buckets. First and foremost, I want to thank Raphael and Ambassador Thomas for a very comprehensive overview of what the MOU means from the U.S. and Caribbean perspective. But from the Virgin Islands perspective, this has never been done before. This is historic. It is unprecedented. In the history of the U.S. Virgin Islands being both Americans and being in the Caribbean, this is the first time it's been done before. Why is that important? The U.S. is the largest trade partner with the Caribbean. On a per annum basis, the State Department reports of the 30 million people traveling from around the world into the Caribbean, half of that are Americans coming into the Caribbean. The problem we've had over the years, while it's nice that we have white sandy beach, turquoise water, blue skies, and palm trees, the problem is that kind of puts us in a very limited perception of who we are and what we can do. Most people, when you start asking them about what else do they know about the Caribbean, they know very little. Even in some cases, when you ask them, what do you know about the U.S. Virgin Islands, particularly St. Croix, they don't know about us. So what this is going to do is position the U.S. Virgin Islands to act as a facilitator, a catalyst, a conduit to build a better relationship between the United States and the Caribbean to increase trade and commerce and the flow of capital in the region. There are three very, very significant areas that are problematic in the region: cost of food, cost of energy, and the movement of people and goods. Those are cost factors that is creating a problem for us. By virtue of the signing of this MOU, what we're doing now, we're now taking the Caribbean from it being a 15-member body community with $82 billion in GDP, now merging that with the U.S. African-American demographic. You have 40 million or 44 million African-American consumers, but the difference is it represents $1.5 trillion in purchasing power. On the Latino side, same thing, okay, in terms of numbers. And equally, the GDP in terms of purchasing power for Latino in the United States is also 1.5 trillion. So combined, you're talking about $3 trillion. So to create a better economy of scale and to create better purchasing power for the region, we now marry. The Virgin Islands is going to serve as that hub to make that connection and marry those demographics in terms of better trade and relationship between the region.
Thank you, Anthony. And I think one of the things I'd like to build on your comments is that this is a private sector initiative. We have for years been working on the governments and how governments come together in treaties and how you work together. But what's unique about this MOU, it's a private sector initiative building on the SETI case vision that says we have a single Caribbean America's single economy. And in that single economy, that's where the magic sauce is. And for the Virgin Islands, this is our first intake into the Caribbean as far as trying to bring this together. But the leadership that Governor Bryant has shown, both with Senator Norvell Francis and Senate President Myron Jackson going to Taiwan, and then the governor going to Taiwan, has shown that we as an island nation in the Caribbean are looking to see what are the different kinds of ways we can integrate with the world. So with that first step, and Ms. Weeks, I know you're the special envoy to Taiwan, taking that knowledge and how we've grown that and bringing it into the Caribbean really makes a difference now, because we have the local government support for the private sector initiatives that we're trying to initiate. And in looking at that, the financial impacts of that are tremendous. So my friend and colleague and co-host of this segment, Chris Principe, has been working around the world. And as Anthony said, he's currently in Greece and looking at what are those financial implications as he actually studies this in depth with his magazine, Financial IT. Chris?
John, thank you. Anthony, great comments. First thing I want to say is this MOU, I think where the real impact that I want to see happen is going to be for the SMEs. You know, we have loads of SMEs that struggle with logistics, struggle with shipping, struggle with financing, struggle with funding, struggle with technology. All these things can be addressed with this MOU. And as you guys mentioned, I'm in Athens, Greece. I mean, behind me was the beautiful water. The night rolled in about half an hour ago, so I thought I was set up for a beautiful view. But I'm here for the DVC Private Credit Annual Summit. And really, one of the interesting things is that the banks are pulling out of a lot of markets, and private credit is stepping in. And this is an issue that we have in the Caribbean, where banks have pulled out due to de-risking, and there's not funding moving in. Well, private credit is moving in, and it's an alternative that I think a lot of people should be looking at. Whether you're an established company, a fintech that's new, or an entrepreneur, you can look at this. And I'll just leave you with one comment that I heard in one panel today when speaking about this, and the Caribbean in particular, is that you shouldn't look at this as a cost of credit. You should look at private credit as cheap equity without an investor. Back to you, John and Anthony.
All right. Thank you, Chris, as always. And I think that the major thing of the MOU for me is that it connects the association that we have with different nations and gives us a different vision. As Raphael had talked about earlier in the program, when you change your vision, okay, and so instead of looking at me, it's me and my country, and I'm trying to survive, and you now say we have a region, and together what we do is important, and together what we do will make a difference. Just changing that mindset of saying, instead of how do we get around the Caribbean and air or transport, but looking at saying it's now no longer how does my country interact, but how am I part of that process? And the hub infrastructure that the governor will talk about in the next segment, of having a hub in Trinidad and Tobago, having a hub in Barbados, and having this hub in the Virgin Islands, it's really not just about then us as the Virgin Islands. It's how do we exploit that hub system in the Caribbean so that all of us can prosper. It's a wonderful thing. So back to you, Anthony, and looking at this whole, as president and the CEO of Steady Case. Okay, this has been your vision for a long time, and it's now come to pass with a lot of effort on your part and others. And what do you have to think as we do this final thing of connecting the dots?
Let me say this for the layman person that is, pretty much watching this. Here is what's happening. When we say unprecedented, historic, the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico are observers in CARICOM. We're not a member state. We can only participate as an observer because of the U.S. multilateral and bilateral deals with the Caribbean. So we now have, by the virtue of creating the Caribbean American Single Economy, we create our own vehicle, our own platform, working in tandem, in concert with the U.S. laws and regulation based on how we can engage, rules of engagement. Okay? Yeah. Unlike before, we couldn't do that in any meaningful way other than observe with CARICOM. We now have our own, if you will, vehicle to sit at the table as equal, representing all of the opportunities that we're able to bring in terms of the dynamics of how we can increase market opportunities. And so basically we can shape a new economic hub, a new economic bloc, a new economic zone by virtue of this MOU signing.
That's fantastic.
Thank you, Anthony. Carolyn, let's wrap this up.
Thank you so much. And John, I appreciate, I've left your name off. Of course, you are the amazing co-host, along with Chris Principe and Anthony as the spearhead of all of this. Great discussion, gentlemen. When we come back, we're going to get to our In the Spotlight, and that's going to be some really interesting information that pulls it all together.
With the Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm Tracy Jonke, brought to you by Dell.com. Small businesses are to thank for more than half of the jobs added over the past decade, but there have been signs this job creation engine is slowing. The Small Business Employment Index from CBiz Investment Advisory Services adds to the evidence. It has found net job losses in 4 of the past 6 months, and October's employment decline was the second in a row. The CBiz Index is based on payrolls and hiring data from 2,800 businesses with 300 or fewer employees, and its findings are supported by the October jobs report from the National Federation of Independent Business. 53% of small business owners reported hiring or trying to hire in October, down from nearly 60% in September. The CBiz Index found the largest job losses at businesses in construction and real estate and those that provide rental and leasing services. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report. With
Wow, what a great discussion we've had today on Connect Caribbean. Now our guest in the spotlight, there could be no better guest than the person who actually signed this memorandum of understanding that brought all this discussion to life. So we're going to be watching some videos of none other than Governor Albert Bryant Jr. Some key remarks regarding this historic event.
Another initiative aimed on capitalizing on the tremendous opportunities presented by the U.S. Virgin Islands strategic location, particularly the development of our blue economy here on St. Croix. Yesterday, we had the launch of Department of Education's first 2 major projects in St. Thomas with the rebuild of the Charlotte Amalie High School and the Bertha C. Bushelta renovation. It was very well attended. People are all excited about it. We also are celebrating the launch and the continuous wins for USVI rebuild, which is $8 billion worth of contracts. We now have actually awarded the project management piece of that. One of the $1 billion contracts is just about to be awarded. And then we also have, actually was awarded already for the rebuild of, I think, 6 St. Thomas schools. And we have the one for St. John that's supposed to be going out presently, if it's not out already. So a lot of excitement around recovery infrastructure in those projects. But the thing is, what happens after all of that? After all that federal money is done? How do we create sustainability? What is beyond all of the construction projects and everything that will ensue? See, from the very beginning of my administration, I've emphasized the importance of harnessing the potential of not only our maritime resources, but also our Caribbean resources. In my first address, I mentioned, for too long we have governed with our backs to the water. Today's signing of this memorandum of understanding is just one more step forward in ensuring that we turn toward the water and take full advantage of the economic benefits that lie within our reach. Today's partnership with Connect Carib, a subsidiary of Pleon Group of Barbados, represents a major move in strategy to grow the territory's blue economy and tap into the vast transshipment opportunities that exist in this region. Through this MOU, we're launching a lot of things, but I want you to recognize the significance of what we have here. We have government leadership connecting with CARICOM and other Caribbean islands. As you know, I've been making a lot of moves, introducing ourselves to our Eastern Caribbean partners. We also have the private sector interconnecting. Later on today at Government House, we will be having the openings cocktail for the South Shore Investor Trade Roundtable. Why is this significant? Because this is just another piece of putting together the future of St. Croix and essentially the future of the Virgin Islands. The real economic growth that's left to be seen is on the Big Island. We've been saying this for years, but now we have pieces coming together. We have a refinery owner that really has a broad outlook on what we could do with the property, including refining. We have the South Shore Free Trade Zone economic policy piece that is in place, which looks at how do we import products, add value to them, and export them. We have the Renaissance Group that is looking at the sale of that property, and we're working with them hand in glove to make sure that we facilitate it in a way that promotes economic growth. And then we have this MOU going on today, which is really the first major move in terms of developing that area and seeking to form trade alliances with our Caribbean partners. Big day, huge day. I really want to thank Anthony Weeks for the work that he has done on this. He has been working at this for quite some time. And the conversation has been around for quite some time, but we now have access to the investors that want to look at these properties, want to look at St. Croix as a worthy investment for the future. Adding to that, the things that we're doing around energy to support the pieces, especially on St. Croix in terms of manufacturing and value-added products. We are also making a lot of other moves in terms of bringing the Caribbean closer together, whether that be our work with CTO and working to find ways to connect the Caribbean through ferries, through air, and through direct flights. The growth of the Caribbean as a region is all tied together. And we want to be the center of that initiative. So I want to thank my partners that came out today for the signing of this MOU, because there's some effective business, what we will say, foundations that will be set here, not only for the Pleon Group and Connect Carib, but also for the rest of the Caribbean that is watching to see what is going on. What will this allow us to do? More business on business, business to business dealings, more communication with our business people in the Caribbean, and absolutely coming together to go to Washington and promote the Caribbean as an economic initiative on a whole to the nation. One of the things that we've been trying to do is to create an economic initiative for the Caribbean through both the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And this partnership helps us puts us closer to that. In the Caribbean, the Virgin Islands is often isolated. It's not a part of what is going on. But there's so much that this MOU is going to allow us to do together, whether it's manufacturing, agriculture, energy, education and training, even healthcare, workforce development, which we are huge on now. We have so much work to do. But direct investment in our economy with the people of the Caribbean is so important. Lastly, I want to say, I think what is important about this is the development of homegrown enterprises. You know, the people that raised me and the people that laid the groundwork for who we are today, develop a middle-class economy in the Virgin Islands using the government, created government jobs in order to employ people. They encourage young people to join the government and stay in the government and work 30 years. We are embarking on a new Virgin Islands economic framework. It's a framework where Virgin Islanders should be the ones who are building the hotels, starting the businesses, doing the construction companies, not by themselves, but with partners, but certainly as players to the table that allow for our economic growth. So I really want to say thank you again to Anthony Raphael for leading this. It's a tremendous piece of work today, and encourage people to come to our investor roundtable tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow.
Wait, what a great guest to have in the spotlight to bring together those key points that help us understand just how impactful this is, not just for the U.S. Virgin Islands, but for the entire Caribbean, and just the economy, what it's going to do. He mentioned the development of homegrown enterprise. So as we close out this segment, we're going to get to our connected voices, And at this point, we will wrap all of the discussions together, from the overview to the strategic points discussed to listening to the governor actually talk about the impact of that. So we invite you to stay tuned.
This is the Bloomberg Green Report. Temperature records are likely to fall again this year. The European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service says 2024 is on track to be the hottest year on record. And the report says this will likely be the first year in which temperatures exceed the targets set at the Paris Climate Conference in 2015. Copernicus says the temperature will likely be more than 1.55 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The Paris Agreement called for reducing carbon emissions with a goal of limiting global warming to 2 degrees Celsius and ideally 1.5 degrees of where they were at the outset of the Industrial Revolution. Scientists believe 2 degrees is the upper limit for preventing climate change from reaching an irreversible tipping point. The Copernicus findings add to growing concerns that a more protracted move higher is just a matter of time because global CO2 emissions have not yet peaked. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg.
So nice, Virgin Islands nice, so nice.
Reimagine a world where the Caribbean is seamlessly connected, where our people, our cultures, and our economies move freely across the islands. This is Connect Caribbean, more than a ferry service. It's the heartbeat of a new era, an era where economic opportunities expand, where trade flows freely across our seas, and cultural exchange flourishes. We are linking businesses, empowering communities, and reigniting the hope for a truly integrated Caribbean. Together, we're shaping a brighter, more unified future for the Caribbean. Connect Caribbean, connecting our islands, our people, our future.
How amazing to have everybody here. What a great program. So much impactful information. This idea of connected voices, I mean, it's hard to know where to start. And Anthony, really, everybody, thank you for all of your efforts over the decades of bringing this to fruition. And then look at your incredible partners here that are telling the story of how this is going to impact and really make life in the Virgin Islands so much more exciting.
Yeah, Carolyn, thank you for that. For the different folks that are just eavesdropping, watching, listening to this program, trying to process everything, obviously, over the new year, the upcoming new year in 2025, there will be different phases of the rollout and implementation of the Connect Caribbean development and its relationship with the three major hubs, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados and the U.S. Virgin Islands, particularly out of St. Croix. And so what it really means for the layman person and for the SMEs, small businesses, we're literally going to open up the market on both sides, where typically there's a disconnect. For years, we have been considered Americans, but uniquely Caribbean because we're in the Caribbean. But the Caribbean didn't see us as the Caribbean because we are the U.S. The MOU signing now addresses, or if you will, debunk or dismisses the fact that we are both Americans, but we're also Caribbean neighbors. And when we talk about trade, Carolyn, if you remember, Andre Hayes and myself and you, when Andre Hayes was the executive director for DC of International Economic Development, he was the first one that said, what about the St. Croix serving as the hub for Washington, D.C., wanting to do business in the Caribbean or vice versa.
Exactly.
It was a light bulb moment.
It was a light bulb.
Because we have the best of both worlds. We are the U.S., but we're also Caribbean as well. And so we're going to use technology as the great equalizer to facilitate this environment, this new ecosystem, to allow trade to flow freely between the United States and the rest of the region, whether it's the English-speaking Caribbean or Latin America.
And I agree with you. And Anthony, thank you. I was just technology is amazing. Suddenly my computer was losing power. But you're exactly right. I think, and that's maybe been 3 years ago when he really said, why not do that? To have the United States of America sitting succinctly in the Caribbean, ready to do business, why not use the Virgin Islands as that platform?
Absolutely. And for we're hearing now that the MOU is signed, the question is what's next? Okay. We have a full plate. What we want to do, obviously, in closing out fiscal year, calendar year 2024, and transition into the new year. So there are a number of heavy lifting that we have to do that is considered long-term, but you have the low-hanging fruit, you have midterm and long-term. So we have a runway. And so in this group discussion, people are asking, what's next? What does this mean? What can they expect? So let's have that conversation.
So Carolyn, I'd like to add in on the next steps, as Anthony talked about. And as people know, my background is in supply chain and logistics. And I think there's two things that we have to consider. First, we have to look at best practices. What are the transparency and regulations that we have throughout the region? We have to consult with the various stakeholders of how business is done now and take a look at those practices and say, how do we change or modify or expand those? We have to have efficient dispute resolution that says we have different kinds of problems among our 50 nations, and we have to figure out how do we resolve those from the private sector perspective. And then we have to have harmonization with international trade standards. So we all have in the United States Single Windows, United Nations Single Windows Initiative Recommendation 33, we have to look at these single windows of all of the Caribbean nations of border police, phytosanitary, weights and measures, agriculture, and see how do we harmonize that so that we can do that. So we have then, with the best practices, the challenges, because we have a lack of infrastructure that supports unification. We have bureaucratic delays that are going to be among us as we try to do that. We have limited resources, as Raphael talked about, and how do we attract that investment for the small and medium-sized enterprises? We unfortunately have some crime and security issues that we have to address with cybercrime and security, and how do we protect those resources of transferring monies in different structures and different vehicles with, as Chris talked about, with how does that money get transferred among nations with different currencies. So lots of things that we have to do and challenges, but now those challenges are within the scope of what our vision now is. And I think that's the wonderful part about the MOU.
Exciting, wonderful, wonderful insights. Thank you, John.
And I want to kind of bring in Raphael on this perspective, because it's interesting how this started. As the people of the Virgin Islands know, the first rollout of the SETI case initiative is to build the St. Croix shipyard. And the St. Croix shipyard speaks to infrastructure, lack of infrastructure, not having enough infrastructure to address the demand of the 14,000 vessels that sail through the region, not having enough ports and facilities to do repair and maintenance. So when Raphael and myself and Ambassador Thomas when we first started talking, it was a singular project to build the St. Croix shipyard, to bring that online, to address, servicing the maritime network. Then here we go now and learned that the Connect Caribbean initiative was addressing the CARICOM mandate to build this ferry network of moving people and goods throughout the region. And so it was all synergetic. And so, Raphael, if you can come in, because it was so natural when we started talking, and we said, why work independent? Why not bring the two together? You want to speak to that, Raphael?
Yes, Anthony, you are mentioning culture change. Because if you're born in an island, your only perspective of your universe is that population of the island. So if you're born in an island of 285,000, you're only going to think at 285,000. So if you open a shop, you're going to sell just to 285,000. If you manufacture a product, you're only selling 285,000, right? So what we are triggering here is that if I open a business in an island that only has 285,000, I no longer need to think about just 285,000. I can think about 44 million common market in the Caribbean region. I can think about the 300 million United States population. The only thing that has stopped the Caribbean from getting there has been its lack of transportation infrastructure. Because even if you look at the regulatory environment between the countries, it exists. It's, between the common market, not a problem, but there's already opportunities here that if you start thinking about producing food, you have a wide market for this. You have 44 million people that eat every day just in the Caribbean, in the CARICOM region alone, that will benefit from that lower cost of food. So you can start creating the next generation of entrepreneur in the food industry. So that is the biggest change that you guys are achieving here with your leadership, Anthony and Dr. Thomas, is the change of perception. You're making the Caribbean people to believe that they can sell to a much bigger market. With before, we are very much stagnant because of the island mentality. Oh, I know it's just this small, that's all I can get. That's not all you can get. You can get much bigger. You can go global. You can go international. You can go regional. And this is where I'm looking forward to watch, to see how the economic dynamic across the region is changed based in one movement, in one leadership.
Great perspective. Oh my goodness. Dr. Thomas, would love to hear you weigh in on this.
Yes. My colleagues have really shared exactly where we are. What I'm going to share is give you a picture of what can happen and should happen and believe will happen. The continent of Africa currently has a financial center that is not based in Africa, it's based many miles from Africa. In fact, to get there, you need to fly many hours, and that's Dubai. So Dubai is the financial capital for Africa. A lot of capital comes from Dubai to Africa. Now, the same thing is going to happen for the region, in the fact that the US Virgin Islands can, just like Dubai is a financial hub for the development of businesses within Africa, the same thing can happen for and will happen, and we're going to make sure it happens actually for the Caribbean. Now remember, this initiative was not done at the governmental level. It was done at the private sector level. Private sector businesses in Africa and Dubai began to work together. And look at what has been created. The same thing, I believe, is going to happen actually for the region. And we are going to follow the same concept and really bring access to capital to the region And I believe this project is going to be it's actually going to be the beachhead. It's actually going to be the breakthrough project that really initiates this. So this project is important in terms of what it offers to the region in terms of connectivity, but also it's a breakthrough project because it's a pattern and is a new precedent.
That's incredible. That's great.
I'd kind of like to get Chris on that because Dr. Thomas hit on some key points on the money supply, movement of money, and the capital inflow to the region between the U.S. and the region.
Yeah, John, I mean, we've been talking quite a bit about a number of things. I want to bring a little bit into technology. And what I want to say is that I think the greatest natural resource within the Caribbean, within the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, is the people. This is our greatest natural resource, and we need to encourage our young people and old to live with technology, work with technology, learn technology, innovate with technology. And this can create so many of the things that we need, both for the financial community, the logistical community, and the even for manufacturing. So that's what I'd really like to look at is how can we bring, and Raphael has said it earlier, really, really clearly, how can we bring our people into the latest in technology so that they can innovate and we can make use of our greatest resource.
Yeah. And Chris, and when you talked about how that happens, when you look at supply chains and what we're trying to achieve here, it's the movement of the assets, the ferry boats, the air that move the supply around. It's the movement of the money, which you've talked about, and how do we do that? But It's the movement of the information, okay? And St. Croix also has this extraordinary infrastructure of fiber and connectivity. So when you're talking about banking and cyber banking and how we reach, as you mentioned, Africa on smart devices and phones that depend on this area that has for too long been redlined by the major banks and major banks leaving. Now, if we go to the private sector, we have this wonderful opportunity to bring all of these things together. The asset movement, the money movement, and the information movement to make this happen.
Wow. Gentlemen, this obviously is much more than a single program. We're going to have to come back and do additional segments on this. Everybody has helped us unpack what this MOU looks like. What we know, it's historic, it's thrilling. As you said, it's groundbreaking. This is a breakthrough opportunity. So everyone, we invite you back to Connect Caribbean on another day. But we're going to continue this discussion. It's been wonderful being here, sitting in for Jennifer. I look forward to hearing much more of this rich discussion, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel. Our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world. All in one place, rtv.network.